Tonight, the people of Grand Bois, Louisiana are getting sick.
Blood disorders, kidney disease, and the birth defects. You just keep seeing them over and over, and you say, what is this?
They believe the oil industry is poisoning them with toxic waste.
I'm scared that I'm doing the wrong thing. Later on in life, I'm gonna see my little boy dying with cancer. Then I'm gonna hate myself.
This is about a kinfolk deal. That's hurting people. That's hurting children. That's destroying a community.
Their own governor doubts them.
This is not something a lot of people have been sitting around here talking about.
Except the people in Grand Bois.
Yeah, but they got a nice lawsuit going too, remember that.
Today, the town is fighting back. They've staked their future on a struggling young lawyer.
It's time for somebody to say to these oil companies, don't set up in our backyard. Don't come here. We've been here for 100 years. You're not going to run us out of here.
This is terrible. And a freshman state senator willing to put his career on the line for the town.
These are the children that are suffering these health consequences. And this is the problem with pure, unadulterated greed.
And now the sleepy town of Grand Bois is battling one of the biggest and most powerful industries the world has ever known. That's our story tonight. Good evening. I'm Ed Bradley. Our story tonight is about a small town whose struggle could affect millions of families across the country. In more than 50,000 oil fields like this one, America's petroleum companies are not only producing oil, they're producing waste, poisonous waste. In every other industry, federal law would require that waste to be tracked, labeled, and handled as hazardous material. But not the oil industry. Years ago, their lobbyists got a special deal from Congress which lets them pump toxic waste out of a well, label it non-hazardous, and dump it near cities and towns without warning a soul. That's what the oil industry has done legally ever since. When this law was passed, hardly anyone noticed, not CBS News, not the nation's leading newspapers, and certainly not the residents of a little bayou town 70 miles southwest of New Orleans.
This is Grand Bois.
You born and raised here?
35 years.
Never lived anywhere else?
No, sir.
What does this place mean to you, Grand Bois?
This is where my people's at, you know, and it's all here. I don't think they have another place like Grand Bois that I know of. I mean, you got beautiful places in this world, but not like my place here. And you drive through Grand Bois, it might look like the trashiest town to you, but to us, it's paradise.
Just tell them what it is. There's no secret around here. You got your crawfish, you got your potatoes, onions, garlic, sausage, and corn. The place put a lot of salt the way they can get more drink. Every year, Good Friday. That's how we celebrate our Good Friday, right here.
Like most of Grand Bois' 300 residents, R.J. Molinaire is part Cajun, part Native American.
You better come and get some, gang. Gonna be there for long.
R.J. and his wife have 3 kids. His sister, Clarice Freelou, and her husband have 2.
It's family. That's what it is. We trust each other. Our families have been here since the early 1900s. I don't think we could survive in a city. You know, this is our small town. You know, this is where we were brought up, and this is where we like to stay.
March 14th, 1994. Exxon dug up an old waste pit in Alabama, then loaded it on trucks headed across state lines to a disposal site called Campbell Wells, located in Grand Bois. The trucks carried documents warning that they might be hauling hydrogen sulfide, a substance so dangerous that only a few breaths of high concentration could be fatal. Virgie Fulmer was driving through Grand Bois when the trucks unloaded.
As I approached Campbell Wells, something just like hit me in the face, and it took my breath, and I was struggling for my breath. I was choking to death.
You were just driving down the road?
Right about the time I got even with Campbell Wells, it's like something just come across like this, and when I inhaled it, well, then it started burning me and choking me.
Fulmer ended up in the hospital that day, then decided to file a lawsuit. Exxon had tested the waste that week and found it contained high levels of benzene, which, according to the Centers for Disease Control, can cause cancer, birth defects, vomiting, dizziness, headaches, and unconsciousness.
I stepped out my door, and it made you pull back your breath like it had cut you off. It was a scary feeling, you know, because you didn't know what was going on.
They had a bunch of 18-wheelers along the road. Then when you got over there, and your eye would start burning, your throat would start burning. I said, man, you got a camera? I said, I'm going to video this. They had guys dressed up in moon suits. And they started dumping, they would run to the front.
Kids were running off the school bus with their shirts over their noses.
When they busted through them doors, my little boy and my little girl, red in the face, and they almost dropped to their knees and saying, Daddy, I don't know what's going on at Campbell Wells, but it stunk so bad, Dad, we can't even breathe.
Both Campbell Wells and Exxon declined to talk to us on camera, but they deny that anything harmful happened in Grand Bois. Louisiana's Governor Mike Foster says the town simply overreacted.
The worst thing you can do with a waste site is probably not poison somebody, it's frighten them with a bad smell. And that's generally what frightens them. And that's what happened. I think they had some hydrogen sulfide in a load that came in there from Alabama that frightened people. Now, obviously somebody slipped up. Slipped up from the standpoint of the politics of running any site like that.
But let's not talk about the politics of running any site. Let's talk about the health of the people there.
Well,
in 1994, when this stuff was dumped there, your state's environmental agency found high levels of benzene in the air in Grand Bois when Exxon was unloading its waste there. They didn't do anything to address that problem.
May well have happened. I'm not aware of that. Nobody's discussed that with me. Again, Ed, I got to tell you that this is something that has not been on the top burner. People have not talked about it a lot in this state. It's a local problem.
In fact, it's a problem that involves America's biggest oil companies sending thousands of barges and trucks full of waste right to the town of Grand Bois. Since 1990, Campbell Wells has built a multi-million-dollar business on oil field waste. 140 acres of it, which they dump, stir, and stack up by the town every day.
We've always heard that it was salt water or just mud. And they made their first mistake when they brought the Exxon waste in. That's when it caught everyone's attention. They figured, well, we're small, we isolated. It's a little bitty community and no one's gonna say a word. And I think we surprised them. You know, our community stood together at a very important time. Our first meeting together, the church was filled. Everybody had one thing in mind, and that was to save our community.
Lord have mercy. Yeah, this is going to be a good crowd today.
The residents of Grand Bois hired Gladstone Jones, an attorney fresh out of law school, to represent them against Campbell Wells and Exxon. He filed a suit against both companies, seeking compensation for health and property damages and a court order to close the waste site.
How much does it take to put on a case like this?
It's well over $500,000.
You didn't have that kind of money when you took on this case.
No,
you were
sir.
working out of your home office.
Right.
I mean, you didn't even have a real office.
I think I had $329 in my checking account when I got this case. All right. Anytime that you've got a group of people like I represent that are living down there on the land, in the bayous, and they have risen up and they have said that we're going to take on a company like Exxon, this isn't the type of case that every lawyer wants to take on, because this is not the kind of lawsuit where you just walk in and you collect the money.
As you all know, that we've been at this fight now for going on 3 years.
Take it too long, you know. I mean, it's just people getting impatient. We still got tumors and cancer popping up. We got to do something now.
I know that.
And I get asked all the time, why can't we just stop this? And I have to tell them it's much bigger than the Grand Bois community. It's national. And there's lots of money behind it. It's Exxon, it's Mobil, it's Texaco, it's Amoco, Arco, British Petroleum. It's all of them. You can get a list of the people that dispose of waste in that community with those 300 people, and it looks like the who's who of the oil industry.
Although Exxon stopped sending waste to Grand Bois in 1994, shipments from dozens of other oil companies continue. So do the problems in Grand Bois. Every breeze there can carry fumes from the pits next door. Every garden can bear traces of oil waste.
As we got into the first year, as we're exposed to it more. Ready for this one? That's when the feeling in the limbs started, the numbness in the hands started, the hot flash. Coming at you. And I started writing it down.
Anna Mathern is a building contractor with 3 children.
February 14th, Valentine's Day. Really, really bad fumes, beyond odors, beyond just a smell, makes us sick. Dizzy, nauseated, headaches again. Poor Nora. I heard yesterday that she's been crying. She's so tired of being sick she can't stand anymore.
I don't feel too good, no. It's hard for me to breathe. My chest or pain, one time just stabbing through my abdomen, my stomach from one side to the other. And I was throwing up and throwing up and throwing up.
My little girl, she's not getting any better. My other one's getting sick too. It hurts me that I gotta leave, gotta find a home for them so they can breathe better and be happy.
It's not that easy just to pack up and go. I have a lot of family here, and all the children that I see, they all have like a real bad sinus, always have a cold, or they have asthma. My son's an asthmatic, and he'll tell me right away, well, Mom, I'd rather be at school because over there he can breathe better. One person has, and you talk to somebody else, and they have the same thing. It gets kind of spooky.
Residents of Grand Bois had their suspicions confirmed last spring when they heard the first findings of a health study of their town. That study is still in progress, but the first phase is complete. A survey of medical symptoms which the residents themselves filled out.
So when we look at the children, we see upper respiratory tract infections, bronchitis, skin rashes, dry bleeding nasal membranes.
Dr. Patricia Williams of LSU Medical Center compared Grand Bois to a nearby town with no disposal site.
All of these, the Grand Bois is much higher. Difficulty breathing, shortness of wind, frequent shortness of breath, wheezing, abdominal pain. This is what alarmed me and alerted me that we needed to look at the metals.
We've got some precancerous lesions in the children. We have exposures. We have compounds that cause cancer that they're being exposed to. Blood disorders, kidney disease, and the birth defects. You just keep seeing them over and over, and you say, what is this? If we don't do something, the children will get sicker, and the parents too.
Dr. Williams has no connection to the town's lawsuit, and she did not investigate what caused these sicknesses. But she's not the only one who thinks that something is very wrong in Grand Bois.
This is Dr. Davis. Could you go ahead and page orthopedics for me?
I've never seen this before in my practice of medicine. You normally don't see that percentage of children having the same problem at the same time.
Like Patricia Williams, Dr. Robert Davis has no part in Grand Bois' lawsuit, but he has treated patients from towns up and down Louisiana's bayous, and he says patients from Grand Bois stand out.
I was most concerned about the symptoms related to the nervous system, which did suggest to me the possibility of a rather serious exposure to an environmental element, which could be very, very dangerous.
There's no one to help. I'm starting to feel myself go down fast, tired all the time, throat hurts, ears ringing, just about all the time now. When will it all end? I was definitely tired of all this, depressed.
So you've been to see a few doctors about this. Do you tell them that you live by Campbell Wells?
Yes, I do. And they say move.
Why don't you?
I can't afford to. I can't sell this place. Who would want to buy it? I'm 1,000 feet from a waste facility that has hazardous material.
The other day I was sitting on the swing and I see my little boy coming down on the bicycle, and I told myself, RJ, what you doing here? Why don't you get out for them, you know? And then I said, but it's to convince them to leave. They don't want to leave. But then later on in life, I'm gonna see my little boy and my little girl dying with cancer. Then I'm gonna hate myself. Just about half of my friends are moving. The first chance they get, they're out of here. They're scared. It hurts, but we ain't gonna give up. This is where we're from, and this is where we're gonna die.
a young lawyer takes on the case of his life.
I am being told every single day that what they are doing is legal. And I am nevertheless arguing that what you are doing is wrong.
When we return.
This is where I was raised at, back here. My little boy, he's 9 now, and he's been fishing with me since he's 2. All right, Pete, let me show you. Watch yourself, dude. This is us, you know, and that's how we make our living. And
my life was maybe too calm before. You know, putting my boy on the bus, come home, do housework, visit my grandma, cook supper, and that was my day. That was it.
Look at this mess right there, bro. I want to shoot that right there. From that day, I started filming, and every chance I get, I sneak up on them and I'll get whatever I can get. It's because I wanted to have proof what they're pouring into themselves.
We'll be pretty busy. I wake up in the morning, it's not the same person that I used to be.
The usual.
I'm doing only what I knew. That's the best I can do. Hi, my name is Clarice Freelu. It's scary. It's when I have to look at 10 to 12 people just straight on and they're just staring back at me.
We learned that our children suffer from upper respiratory infections and bronchitis. We learned that our residents suffer from heart problems, and the list goes on.
The people of Grand Bois also learned that in 1994, state agents suspected Exxon trucks were releasing hydrogen sulfide, a deadly poison, into the air in Grand Bois. But according to state documents, those agents ordered tests for everything other than H2S, hydrogen sulfide.
They don't overlook it. They decided not to test for it. Now, why would a state environmental agency direct its own lab not to test for something that could be a problem, could be poisoning the community?
I can bet that didn't happen under my watch, and if it did, I'd be very curious to see why it happened. But if something bad happened then, it should have been investigated, people should have been punished. This is not something a lot of people have been sitting around here talking about.
Except the people in Grand Bois.
Yeah, but they got a nice lawsuit going, too, remember that.
But there's a reason for the lawsuit, because they feel that their lives are
There's always a reason for a lawsuit. We had a little brown haze come off the Mississippi River a few weeks ago, and had lawyers running all over the state.
So do you think that this is just about lawyers and money and attempts to line their pockets?
I have no idea, but it is obviously part of the equation.
If Gladstone Jones wins the case, he does stand to make a lot of money, but it will be an uphill battle.
I certainly can't match Exxon's resources, and we need not kid ourselves that that is often a strategy in litigation. I mean, wear them out.
We're a big company. We've got deep pockets.
Of course, they made $6 billion last year.
We can pay our in-house lawyers?
We can pay our in-house lawyers, and when we get tired of dealing with the in-house lawyers, when the case starts getting a little bit sticky, we'll go out and we'll hire not one law firm with 100 lawyers, we'll go out and hire 2 law firms with 100 lawyers.
Jones found a Texas law firm who would consult on his suit and pay for it. Then he hired a team of experts who pieced together a theory about what happened at Campbell Wells in 1994.
We found out that what they were bringing to that company in the Grand Bois community was an awful lot of hydrogen sulfide. And on those unfortunate days that the wind was blowing towards animatherns or norabonins or any of the other residents, it went right into that community.
Jones traced the records all the way up to the executive in charge of Exxon's Grand Bois shipments, a vice president now working in London.
He was the man that had the ability to say, what are we doing here? Let's stop this. I wanted to go ask him what he knew and what his company intended to do about it.
He asked those questions in a videotape deposition, and we obtained a copy of it.
Sir, could you please provide your name to us?
John Steele.
If I had to identify the single most important point of the John Steele deposition is that when he was asked, do you know what's in oil field waste? He said, no, not really.
Are you aware if non-hazardous waste, oil field waste, contains materials such as benzene?
I'm not aware.
What about hydrogen sulfide?
Not aware.
Is it hydrogen sulfide? Is it benzene? Is it xylene? If this was in any other industry, outside of the oil industry, I can assure you they would have known exactly what it was. But because this is legal, they just send it on over.
Well, at any point did you ask the question, what was it that we were hauling to the Campbell Wells Grand Bois facility?
Well, it's my understanding it's non-hazardous oil field waste.
He knew that in March of 1994 that 300 residents got up in arms. He received a letter from an individual in the Grand Bois community who had an acquaintance with him that said, "I'm sick. My people are sick from fumes coming from this pit."
Read that for me if you would.
We have had 2 families that had to move because their children were sick, leaving their homes vacant, unable to sell them, period. The list goes on and on. I can't begin to tell you of all the problems our community has had with these people, period.
Okay. What did you do, if anything, to investigate whether Exxon was responsible in any respect whatsoever for the illnesses that Mr. Mathern wrote to you about in this July 11th, 1994 letter?
I had some discussions with the attorneys.
Okay, did you order any type of investigation into the illnesses that Mr. Mathern talked to you about, sir?
No, I did not.
Why not?
I did not.
I'm asking why not?
I had some discussions with the attorneys.
A few months after this testimony, Exxon sent CBS a written statement which reads in part, Exxon cares deeply about the health and safety of the public, its employees, customers, and contractors. Exxon fully complied with the law in delivering oil and gas waste materials in 1994 to Campbell Wells.
They put an all-field waste site in our backyard. It would never been placed where, let's say, doctors, lawyers, rich people would live. They don't even know us. They've never come into this community to meet the people.
The town finds a champion.
They may be poor, but they're not stupid. And they know that they're getting shafted over there.
When we come back. Oilfield waste is not just a problem in Grand Bois. Across the country, petroleum companies are drilling and pumping about 400,000 gas and oil wells, and every one of them produces waste. Most oil producers treat their waste right in the oil field, but federal regulators don't keep track of it, and millions of Americans who live nearby have no way of knowing if they are exposed to poisonous chemicals. Mark Rubin is with the American Petroleum Institute, an industry lobbying group.
Shouldn't they have the right to know that?
Sure, I think people have a right to know.
But they don't, because it's treated as non-hazardous waste.
The states have extensive information on our waste. And if people want to know more about the waste, they can talk to the facility operator. They can talk to the state regulatory agencies.
Well, we did talk to the agencies in all 33 oil-producing states. Not one of them knew what toxic chemicals were in all their waste pits or even where all the pits were. What's more, we talked to the head of the Environmental Protection Agency, Carol Browner, and she not only disagreed with Mr. Rubin and with all her predecessors at the EPA about this law, she challenged Congress to change it.
Congress should revisit this loophole. I mean, there's no other thing like this in federal law. Big Oil got a sweetheart deal. And the effect is that the people who live near these facilities don't even know what is being placed in their community. Benzene, toluene, arsenic, lead. What the scientific health studies tell us about these sorts of waste is that they can result in reproductive problems, birth defects, cancers, lead poisoning, which can lead to loss in IQ points, serious health problems.
Benzene is benzene, isn't it?
That's correct.
So why do you get to call your benzene non-hazardous because it's in oil field waste, while everybody else has to call their benzene hazardous?
I don't call our benzene non-hazardous.
Well, there's benzene in what you call non-hazardous waste.
I've said if our waste are not handled properly, they pose hazards to the public, clearly. If our waste are not handled properly, they pose hazards to the public.
You don't have to know what's in this waste. All you have to do is say, this waste came out of the ground when I sunk an oil well. And whatever comes out of the ground, you don't have to test it, you don't have to understand what's in it, you can dump it anywhere. That's how broad the loophole is. There's nothing like it in any environmental statute.
I believe that EPA studied our industry, and they reached the conclusion that the state regulatory bodies that are already in place have the ability, talent, and power to regulate this industry, and they're doing a good job.
That's exactly what the EPA told Congress 9 years ago after a massive study of oil field waste. But we tracked down the director of that study, Carla Greathouse, and she told CBS something she had never been allowed to tell Congress, the real recommendations of her report.
The conclusions were that some of the wastes can pose dangers to human health, even if they're managed in accordance with existing regulations.
So that you wanted to end these exemptions?
For certain fractions of the waste, yes.
And the scientists at the EPA were in agreement with you?
Yes, they were.
And what happened when you move up the ladder at the EPA to the political appointees?
The decision was overturned.
How did you feel then?
I was appalled. It's a very difficult pill to swallow. It really is, especially when you know that there are damages occurring out there that are going to continue to occur if something isn't changed.
What do you say to the people who live in Grand Bois?
They're at the mercy of the people who operate that facility, and they're at the mercy of this industry that dumps their waste there. They really are.
There's nobody else backing up the little guy. There's nobody representing the little guy. And these guys have power that's just unbelievable.
For years, Dr. Mike Robichaux had a quiet medical practice a few miles from Grand Bois.
My daughter's just a few days older than him.
Then he ran for the state senate and won, vowing to carry the fight over Campbell Wells to the state capitol.
We're going to a Senate committee meeting to vote on a bill that Dr. Mike proposed. If everything goes right like Dr. Mike has planned, we'll know something today.
Robichaux filed a bill that would close down the Campbell Wells waste site in Grand Bois. You don't think that you've in any way been made an unwitting accomplice to a group of people who are looking for a fat settlement from a company with deep pockets?
I don't feel that way at all. And I wouldn't be here if I even remotely felt that way. I trust these people as much as I've trusted anybody in my life. Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Members of the committee. What needs to be understood is that we've got some toxic chemicals that are being delivered to this residential area.
Now, did you say earlier that this was legal?
We've got some ridiculous laws, okay? When you define hazardous materials as being non-hazardous.
Senator Robichaux, I hope you realize that this bill has a profound long-term effect on the oil and gas industry in Louisiana. You can't strangle an industry. Everybody out here uses oil and gas. They use thousands of products made from a petroleum base. And if you talk about disposal methods that cost even more, then you're talking about increasing the cost of all the items that are affected by oil and gas.
Senator Bean, we're not strangling an industry. We're strangling the populations surrounding this particular aspect of this industry.
Months earlier, we asked Robichaux if he had any objective evidence about the illnesses in Grand Bois, and he requested the health study by Dr. Patricia Williams of the LSU Medical Center. Then he called on her to testify before the state senate.
And so this is what is seen in the Grand Bois community that is statistically significant. We have the following: kidney problems, upper respiratory tract irritation or infection, bronchitis, pleurisy, conjunctivitis, sensory loss, bloody vaginal discharge, not menstruation, frequent chest pain, blurred vision, severe pain in eyes, chronic eye irritation, difficulty in vision, sometimes sees halos around lights, frequent tearing of eyes, swelling of eyes, hands, or feet, very frequent urination, loss of memory, dizziness, frequent or severe headaches, difficulty in swallowing, forgetfulness, depression, trembling of fingers.
Doctor.
Yes.
How many more pages of this are you going to read?
Many, many more.
All
It's
right,
in the record.
But we want to put it in the record so that
Okay.
we'll have a record of it.
This data says simply this: it is suggestive that there is an environmental cause affecting the Grand Bois community and not the control community.
Louisiana's state agencies have reserved their judgment on Dr. Williams' study, but they still say that Campbell Wells is not the problem in Grand Bois.
You have to understand the agencies, the agency heads, these people in the industry support us, and they have been and always will be.
Chief Dale Givens, Secretary for Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality.
And much of the legislation that I've proposed, I've had to fight state agencies.
And the investigation did not reveal violations of air quality regulations or standards. That doesn't mean that the people didn't smell something. It means that simply that within the current standards and guidelines on the thing that they were in compliance at the time.
Senator Robichaux.
Mr. Givens.
Yes, sir.
Now, I have never shouted at anybody in my life, but this is unbelievable for you to stay there and make these statements in front of these people. They may be poor, but they're not stupid. And they know that they're getting shafted over there, okay? Now, the oil and gas industry can sit over here with your coats and ties and all your money and all this BS we're listening to over here today.
Senator,
this is terrible.
I mean, we're reaching a point here where we need to make a decision. Would the Secretary call the roll?
Senator Malone?
No.
Senator Bean?
No.
Senator Dean? Senator Johnson? Senator Robichaux?
Yes.
Senator Syracuse?
No. The amendment fails 3-2. Senator Robichaux, you ready to close?
I think everything that needs to be said has been said. And I promise you we're not through. Okay. This is just the beginning.
Dr. Mike put a lot on the line for us. And they knocked us down, and it's been like this with Campbell Wells from day one.
Pretty good right there?
We have our little victories, we have our knockdowns. But it's far from being over.
Now that's a song.
We're not stopping. We can't stop.
The man deserves it, bro.
A state audit shows former State Labor Secretary Robin Houston had quite a travel year last year. Port Allen dealt with nagging high winds, but started its first ever Bon Fest in très bon fashion. And LSU has arrived at the Independence Bowl. WAAP News tonight at 10 has it all.
Over half of all fatal traffic accidents are alcohol-related. Don't drive drunk. Knowledge for life from Our Lady of the Lake.
Watch Daybreak weekday mornings at 5:30 on WAFB Channel 9.
Happy holidays from WAFB Channel 9.
To CBS, share a moment with the world.
Summer is rainy season in South Louisiana. When it rained steadily last July, Water District official Kirk Sheremy feared that the pits at Campbell Wells might overflow.
The water levels in the pits were rising. Tidal surge comes in on top of something like that, and it's the perfect recipe for an environmental catastrophe.
When there's a storm surge, what happens to the material that's in the pits?
That material is going to end up out of those pits, out of those levees.
And what impact would that have?
I think it would be a disaster. But it's only a matter of time. It's in a swamp. It's not going to stay in a swamp forever.
July 17, 1997, Hurricane Danny is reported to be about 60 miles away in the Gulf of Mexico.
Well, if that hurricane comes through, all of those pits at Campbell Wells are going to start overflow.
Somebody's got to watch them because we know the government won't. It's getting too bad now. We got to do what we got to do.
They're just dumping away. Get it in there before the rains come so that way it can flood all over the place. 6 inches or less and that pit would be probably overflowed. That's why, see, we keep watching the clouds hoping it doesn't come.
And this is the center of the storm system. Here, this is up.
If that storm comes this way, what's going to happen? Everything overflows. It's going to be too late.
Because our pits are going to go over if we have any more rain or the storm comes this way.
But if this, for some reason, would move north, we could have
Our
a
pit's
problem.
over.
Keep your fingers crossed. Now,
That
you
comes
saw our
up. Grand Bois history.
Yep. A minimal storm like that.
A little bitty storm like
Minimal
that
storm.
could put us out of our homes.
You got 4 of them ready to overflow.
I never even looked at cell 11.
Cell 11 is just as bad as this thing here.
Oh, gosh.
9 p.m. Hurricane Danny is moving slowly. Towns just south of Grand Bois have been evacuated.
We've got this stuff near the top of this pit. If it comes over, it's going to be like a major oil spill, okay? Because we know that that's the kind of stuff that's in there.
We got to see what we can do because already everything's getting ready to overflow.
Where will we go?
I don't know. We're going to have to find a place for us to go.
2 a.m. Hurricane Danny hits the coast 60 miles east of Grand Bois and heads toward Mississippi. Grand Bois is spared.
I think we got through this one. If Hurricane Danny would have come just a few miles west, we would have had all of this material exiting the site. It would have ended up in the water systems for 250,000 people. And we would have had a community that would have been inundated with toxic materials.
But in the end, Hurricane Danny didn't hit.
That's right. But it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. That material is going to get off-site. It's going to get off-site because of an accident, a natural disaster, and the community is going to suffer.
If a flood ever did come through Campbell Wells, the first family to evacuate would be Lias Verdans.
That's Campbell Wells. And right there, that's my house right there.
Lias Verdans happens to be the unfortunate soul that lives 333 feet away from the first cell. He and his wife and his daughter.
Has his family been harmed?
His little girl is as sick as any 7-year-old with these type of problems can be. I mean, she has got a host of medical problems, central nervous system problems, upper respiratory problems, gastrointestinal problems, learning disabilities. She lives 333 feet away from this thing.
In 1982, Lias Verdun built a house on some land he'd leased in Grand Bois. A few years later, they dug a waste pit about 300 feet away from him. That put Lias well inside the 500-foot buffer zone required by state law and right at the center of the town's lawsuit. One day last spring, Lias started getting visits from his landlord, Maurice Naquin, who is also Campbell Wells' landlord and a defendant in the case. He tried to persuade Lias to leave his house and to fire his lawyer, Gladstone Jones.
Lias said, look, I got it all on a tape recorder. I stuck it in my cowboy hat, and I put my cowboy hat over the tape recorder, and he said, I want you to come down and I want you to listen to this. And so I gathered some of the people who could interpret this Cajun French, and I heard it from my own ears.
The next day, we set up our own camera in Lias's window, and Maurice Naquin came back.
Gladstone Jones ne trust pas, Nick. I trust pas, I don't trust. Tu veux pas ta mère?
What he's saying is, cool, Lord, don't talk to that crook, Gladstone.
Est-ce qu'a poursuivi Exxon?
Gladstone collected some millions from Exxon.
Jesus.
Exxon awarded y'all already some money.
Exxon awarded you money, and I kept it. Is basically.
Probably glad you
All right,
know
we'll
how
keep
you
going.
are.
I know that we're getting somewhere now. They don't start making these careless allegations unless they're getting a little bit nervous about it. This is about to get really nasty.
Apparently we're getting to them.
So what they'll do is they'll try and take me out, then they'll try and take you out.
That's it.
So, but we're not going anywhere, right?
Right.
Dear Mr. Verdun, we will purchase your home for its fair market value.
I understand that.
Campbell Wells offered Lias $50,000 to move and to give up his claims in the town's lawsuit.
I might not know how to read and write, but I'm going to tell you what, even though they would come and offer me $1 million, I'm going to tell them that I'm not going to give up my right.
Lias refused the offer, then sent his wife and daughter to what he believes is safer ground with family members in another town. Lias remains behind.
Even though I split up my family, I'm not going to let Campbell Wells chase me away from my home. But after I'm going to be alone, I know it's going to be hard. I'm going to be by myself in the house, and I'm not going to have my child with me, and Rosemary. All of this is going to be gone.
Hope is revived.
I was sitting in the office all depressed. I get a telephone, it's back on.
I said, oh, thank you, Jesus.
When we return. The people of Grand Bois got a surprise last summer. Senator Mike Robichaud's bill to close Campbell Wells, once given up for dead, now sprang back to life in the State House of Representatives.
I tell you, that was the biggest roller coaster. I was sitting in the office all depressed. I get a telephone, it's back on.
I screamed out because I thought it was over. It was finished. They had to shut down. And I said, oh, thank you, Jesus. But it's not the finish yet. Still fighting.
That bill is being considered by the House now. The lobbyists are out there in the hallway.
And these guys are
taking each of the legislators, bringing them out and telling all kinds of stories about how this is going to destroy the oil and gas industry, how there's been no objective evidence that there's been any problems.
Tremendous amount of money behind these people. And I'm not saying that my colleagues are being paid off, but one way or the other they're influenced, because if they don't support these people, they may be their enemies in the next election. It's just the way it works.
The main issue in this debate right now is, do we want to cast government in a position where the government targets a particular business and says, you may have a problem down the road, we're not going to complete any studies, we're not going to finish what we're going to do, we're going to shut you down. I don't believe that that's what this process is about. At this time, I would move to table the entire subject matter.
Next for the floor, Representative Holden.
Mr. Speaker, members of the House.
Representative Kip Holden helped lead the House fight over Robichaux's bill. Is there anything in common between the district, the area you represent, and a community like Grand Bois?
Poor. People are poor there. People don't have the luxury of picking up and moving out. And then when they try to come back legislatively, the big guns come out and try to stop them.
This is about a kinfolk deal. A deal between the regulators of this state and Campbell Wells and big oil and gas. Some of these chemicals are in the bodies of our constituents. Their lives and health are in danger. But they want you to walk in their shoes and understand their problems and understand that they've come into this legislature saying, help us. Help us. Help us.
The vote will occur on the substitute motion. Open the machine. Are you finished voting? Are you finished voting? Close the machine, Mr. Clerk.
It's Dr. Mike's. Hello. Bye-bye. Didn't make it.
It's bad. When the truth can't come, I guess I don't know, but I ain't gonna give up. If I'm still alive in 10 years, I'll be standing by with the last one.
Well, I'll be right there with you, buddy.
We're not going anywhere.
Nope.
No, we're not going anywhere, they don't.
We're staying right here.
The legislature, in their eyes, let them down. But it's not the legislature, it's not the governor, it's not United States Congress. It's 12 people that live in any one of these houses up and down this bayou that are going to decide whether what these companies have done is right or wrong.
What kind of settlement could they offer you to end this, Campbell Wells?
Closure. Close the gates.
Money wouldn't do it?
It don't do us no good, the money. We just want Campbell Wells gone.
What happens if you lose us?
We ain't going anywhere, so we're gonna fight. We ain't gonna stop. If you listen to what the people tell you, why y'all fighting Campbell Wells? They're too big. They're never too big. That's one thing about Cajun people. Push them around too long, they'll fight back. We're fighting for our lives. Really, we're fighting for our children.
The people of Grand Bois expect to go to trial against Campbell Wells and Exxon next May. We'll be back in a moment. When we first talked to Louisiana's Governor Mike Foster about the problems in Grand Bois, he told us, in effect, there was nothing to worry about. But in the glare of publicity surrounding this broadcast, the governor has had second thoughts. Now he says some oil field waste can cause illnesses ranging from severe headaches to cancer. He recently announced new rules for oil waste in Louisiana, and the state has also begun to monitor the air at Campbell Wells to see if it's poisoning Grand Bois. Whatever happens in Louisiana, officials in other states are as oblivious to toxic oil waste as Louisiana has been. We'll never know how many people have gotten sick because of oil field waste. We'll never know how many other Grand Bois there are. I'm Ed Bradley. Thank you for joining us. Good night.
For a transcript of this program, send $10 to Burrell's Transcripts, Box 7, Livingston, New Jersey, 07039. Or call 1-800-777-TEXT. For a video cassette, call 1-800-934-NEWS.
Deck the halls with Late Show laughter as Dave greets Terry Bradshaw, Billy Zane, and Darlene Love. But first, your local news.
Coming up on WAP News tonight, a verdict in the trial of the second Oklahoma City bombing suspect, some not of all of the charges. A state auditor says Louisiana's former labor secretary may have kept sloppy travel books. An armed bank robbery in Baton Rouge involving heavy firepower. You see how it went down and how the robbers may have botched their disguises. Next.